Story 1. Carter and his family moved to a very remote hamlet in Michigan, yet our communication has never stopped. His family is very rural. I would even say they're kind of a redneck, so the relocation there wasn't shocking. His family always extends invitations for me to visit. They hold me in high regard. We're 19 now. Carter works for his father, and I attend college. Up there, they own an enormous property. It wasn't my first visit. I had been up there previously. I was going to spend the fall weekend at Carter's family house up there. Carter would spend this weekend alone with his dad, without the presence of his mother and sister. The drive up there takes 4.5 hours. There is an abundance of open fields and farmland surrounding them. There was a dirt lane about 300 feet off the main road that led to their property. Carter and his father gave me a hearty welcome when I arrived. I carried my suitcase inside from the car and joined them. They were already enjoying beers in the backyard. Carter was telling me about all the local trails that we could go off-road on in my Toyota 4Runner. Although I had never gone off-road before, I was eager to give it a go. After grilling us some hamburgers, Carter's father left to go to his friend's place. After Carter and I got into my car, he showed me how to travel to this nearby route that seemed like it would be ideal for off-roading. We had a few hours of light remaining. It was about 6 o'clock. We off-roaded on different paths near Carter's house for approximately an hour. We left the paths and returned to the road when the light started to fade a bit because it became darker in the center of the woods. We were just traveling through some farmland when we came across this building, which looked like an abandoned church with a sizable cornfield next to it. Carter claimed that, despite frequently passing by, he had never gone inside. What should we do next? Naturally, we both decided to return and investigate later, but Carter suggested we check out the motorcycles first. His family owns a gazillion mountain bikes, each with its own lights and accessories. After we returned to his house via car, he grabbed a backpack and packed some flashlights, tequila, and a bottle of Sprite inside. We grabbed the 2 nicest bicycles they had, each with handlebar-mounted night riding lights. We've been serious fitness enthusiasts since high school, so I didn't mind a lengthy bike ride when he indicated it would likely take 20 minutes. We took flashlights because it was getting very dark outside when we arrived at the abandoned building. The grass was completely overrun. Just to be careful, we checked to make sure no automobiles were approaching before entering the property. To ensure that no one would spot our motorcycles, we slightly concealed them among the cornfields. Without using the flashlights, there was still just enough light outdoors to navigate. We were careful not to draw too much attention to ourselves. We wanted to take artistic Instagram photos of each other inside the building. The shape of the windows confirmed that this was, in fact, an old church. Because one window was black, we couldn't see anything inside. I instructed Carter to provide me with a flashlight. The flashlight changed everything. We could now see inside. Something odd caught our attention in the pews. A person seated with their back to us and what appeared to be a hunched head. Carter added that, due to its motionlessness, the object appeared to be a mannequin. Carter and I engaged in a friendly bet, with Carter wagering that it was a mannequin, and me wagering on an inebriated homeless guy. We found the front door boarded up when we arrived. Carter gave the door a jolt, simply to test if it would move, but it remained fixed. Since there was no way for a homeless person to enter, he inferred that he had won the bet. Hold on, let's look out the other windows for a better view. Walking around the church's other side, we found the window with the best view of everything. However, when I shined the flashlight through the window, everything that had been in that pew a few minutes ago vanished. It was terrible too, but I told Carter he owed me money because I was correct. He wondered, where had they gone then? I directed the light in all directions until we both saw the man standing directly to the left of the inside window at the same moment and leaped. He was observing us. However, I didn't think there was a homeless man there. We ran back to the cornfield and set out. In a panic, we looked for the bikes, but we couldn't find them. We were trying not to expose ourselves by turning on our flashlights because it was so dark outside right now. Something slammed in the direction of the church building. It sounded like a door. Carter said that he heard something in the cornfield, like someone brushing across the stalks, so I should keep quiet. Then it simply stopped and ceased to exist. Complete silence. There was absolutely no breeze, so the crops were entirely still. We stayed put, hunched over, afraid to move. After a full minute of standing in this spot, Carter asked in a low voice, "Which way did we leave the bikes?" Suddenly, we heard someone running towards us, brushing aside the crops a few feet away from us. We both ran through the fields, some of which slapped me in the face, and I yelled, "Go!" We eventually emerged into the open, escaping the cornfield and sprinting for the road. The pursuit was over for us. Carter immediately contacted his father, who arrived to pick us up. Although he was more upset about the motorcycles than anything else, he still thought it was appropriate for us to leave the bikes and flee. He wasn't the type of father to get upset with us for trespassing, drinking, or anything similar. He brought his rifle and drove us back to the chapel the following day. After searching through the crops for the bikes, we placed them in Carter's dad's truck bed. As we turned to leave, we noticed someone at one of the church's windows. That individual had to be the same. I believe he moved eerily away from the window when he noticed us observing him. The fact that Carter's father said, "Let's get the hell out of here," was quite unsettling. It meant a lot to him that his dad, who's a really tough guy, was feeling spooked. After that, we went to a barbecue restaurant where we had a lot of food and beverages. Carter's father then called a number in town to inform them that someone was occupying the abandoned building. Bringing it to their attention felt like a significant accomplishment. Who knows who that man was, or whether he is still lurking in that church. Story 2. Along with my brother and his spouse, I reside on a farm. During the busy season, we divided up the tasks. They travel quite a bit during the off-season. A few years ago, my fiancé passed away, and I haven't truly reintroduced myself to the public yet. I'm a solitary person who finds the off-seasons to be very taxing. It was early October, just before our last harvest season. For several days, my brother Joe and his spouse were away from home. It makes sense that when I'm personally manning the fort, something similar would occur. It was just another ordinary night, with all the windows in the home left open to let in the cool October air. Abruptly, I heard someone scream outside. That was a woman's scream. It was unbearably high-pitched. I couldn't tell if it belonged to a grown woman or an adolescent girl. I bolted out of my lazy boy chair and proceeded to get my rifle from my bedroom gun safe. The cool, windy air welcomed me as I stepped outside. After waiting for a moment on the front porch, I heard the scream once more. It originated in the cornfield. I let off a warning shot, firing a shell into the air. I had no idea what was going on at the time. It might have been a group of teenagers acting like punks or someone in peril. I heard a woman's voice cry out, "Help!" after I fired the round, and then there was stillness. There's nothing but wind now, so I cried out, "Who's out there? Where are you?" As I walked into the cornfield, I grabbed my cell phone and dialed 911, turning on every outdoor light in my house and waiting for a response. I relayed my observations to the operator, who then instructed me to wait for numerous police officers to arrive. In the end, 4 people arrived, and with their help, we all looked over the cornfield while shining torches and calling out to anyone in need. In my opinion, the police must take reports of people shouting for assistance a bit more seriously. One police officer advised me to call 911 again if I heard somebody scream for help, and they would be there when we eventually discovered no one. After that, everyone departed. I retreated inside the house, but not before giving the cornfield one last glance. I shut the door behind me and turned out the lights. Given the lack of activities for children in this county, It seemed plausible that they might have been trying to scare some unlucky farmers and households. I watched TV for an additional hour before going upstairs to bed. Because I was a chronic insomniac, I took a couple of melatonins to help me fall asleep. Normally, I would say that's regrettable. I heard creaks and clunks from downstairs. It dawned on me that I neglected to shut the downstairs windows. This house has paper-thin walls that allow you to hear everything, and every floor makes noise. Grabbing my cell phone, I gave my brother Joe a call. When he answered, I whispered to him, "Is he home?" "No," he replied. All my body hairs stood up at that moment, signaling fight or flight. Since my brother lived a few towns away, the police dispatch center would have been the same if I had said, "There's someone in the house, call the police for me." He replied that he would, then hung up without asking any questions. I crept as stealthily as possible to the safe and retrieved my shotgun. However, I'm positive I made a sound when I scampered closer to it. It was unavoidable. There was undoubtedly someone in my house. To open the door, I slipped over. I peered downstairs via the stairwell. Downstairs, I could still hear the breeze blowing through the house. My armpit hairs were standing at the end. Trying not to make any noise, I began to slowly make my way down the stairs, one at a time. However, I barely descended a short distance before I heard footfall on the wood floors beneath, moving closer and closer to the stairwell until a tall, thin figure emerged at the bottom of the steps. He ignored my warning to "don't move" as I cocked the shotgun. He disappeared from view with an almost serene gait, and I heard his footsteps resuming as he ran past the living room and out the back door. For a brief while, I tried to chase him and cried, "Stop!" But as soon as he left my house, I closed the door and called my brother. "The police were on their way," he said. Before the police returned, I locked all first-floor windows. The cops were the same. They took a quick look around the property's perimeter, but this time they turned on all the lights. After realizing I was armed, one of the policemen declared he would spend the night on the property. However, I don't think he intended to return. In actuality, he never did, but that's not where the narrative ends. As I was bringing the season's final harvest to a close in the combine, I noticed a shoe on the field. To pick it up and inspect it, I stopped the machine. It was an 8.5 women's shoe. This brought back memories of the cries I heard and the intruder bursting into my home a few hours later. I made another call to 911 and left the shoe in the same location to avoid obstructing any possible evidence. Upon arrival, law enforcement conducted an additional examination of the cornfield and seized the shoe as a potential piece of evidence related to a possible disappearance. To help them find any potential odors, they even brought police dogs. The odd thing is that, at least at the time, there were no reports of missing females in our county. Whoever it is, I hope they are still here. It sickens me to think that someone might have died on my property. Story 3. Our family owned a vacation house in Hollywood, South Carolina when we were little. Vacation home means this 3-bedroom mobile home. We means my 3 brothers and myself. Although it wasn't fancy, thinking about it brings back memories of our early years. When we turned off the highway, we knew we were halfway there, and the scenery changed to nothing but farmers. Because we were the second oldest, I'm going to estimate that we were 14, 12, 10, and 8 years old at the time of this story. Even though the mobile home was a touch outdated, at least it had electricity. Even though the TV up there was somewhat ancient, we could still play games on it with our PlayStation. Since we'd been traveling up there for so long, we had a list of places we'd love to visit. A large primary school playground where we'd always play hide and seek while our parents sat there reading magazines. A grocery shop where we'd love to play games. We also had a wonderful time investigating all the neighboring woods. Our parents didn't forbid us from walking to our closest neighbors, even if it was a little bit of a walk. This year marked the first time they allowed Todd, our younger brother, to accompany us on our explorations while they remained behind in the mobile home. Our mobile home was situated on a lengthy road that ultimately led to a dead end, so we decided to take a detour that diverged from this dead end. It's important to note that while we strolled along these roads, there was hardly any traffic on these roads while we strolled along them. Thus, the few residents on this route would be the only ones through traffic. We had never seen an automobile before in our lives at this dubious-looking house and farm. Perched atop a small hill, it offered a view of the street below. There was a small cornfield nearby, suggesting that people were still residing there. But it was strange because in all the time we had lived there, we had never seen a person or a car. We therefore concluded that this was the ideal location for a game of hide-and-seek between the cornfield, the two buildings, the woods around the property, and the shed. Now that it was well into the day, we agreed that Tony, our eldest brother, would be the first seeker, and that we would proceed from oldest to youngest. The remainder of us then left to go hide. I headed into the crops to hide. "Ready or not, here I come," called Tony, and I just sank down among the browning corn, completely out of sight. I waited for a long time until I heard footsteps crunching the dead, decaying crop leaves on the ground and rustling in the crops. Though I wasn't sure which of my brothers it was, I decided not to take a chance. After leaving the crops, I dashed into the grass and up the hill towards the red shed. I thought it was one of my younger brothers. I thought Tony would follow me outside, but he didn't. There was a ruckus outside my house. Tony was chasing my brother George, who was 10 years old, down the hill. The two were laughing and screaming. Tony managed to catch him, eliminating George. I remained behind the shed until I saw Todd leaning against the house's back wall, laughing and staring at me. I closed my mouth to say shh, and he followed suit. Wait, who was in the cornfield with me then? I asked myself. Tony easily and quickly tagged Todd as he walked around the house, and since I was directly in front of him, he then noticed me. I got a helpful speed boost when I started sprinting down the hill, but Tony also gained speed, and he was quicker and bigger than me. He easily captured me. The four of us got together at the bottom of the slope, beside the road. The plan was for me to go up next, but instead, I inquired if anyone else had ventured into the crops. When they all declined, my fear took hold. I told them that we should leave because I heard someone walking among the crops, possibly the homeowner. After that, we hurried out of there and strolled back to the mobile home, where our parents were sitting in the living room watching a movie. We all headed to our favorite local pizzeria for dinner. I seem to recall that our father informed us that the house where we were playing was unoccupied. We decided to play flashlight tag as soon as we returned because it was getting dark outside. I'm sure they only allowed us to go because Tony was 14 and felt he was old enough to watch over us, but our mom didn't want Todd to go out with us after dark. We decided to play flashlight tag, which is essentially hide and seek, except that you lose if the seeker with the flashlight exposes you, so the three of us set out to return to that house. When we returned to the property, it was nearly completely dark. Because Tony had sought it last time, they wanted me to do so this time as well. So I turned around, counted to 60, and then yelled, "I'm coming!" I deliberately left the flashlight off to conceal my location. I could hardly see well enough to get anywhere. There were no lights on in the home when I ran up the hill to the house. There were no lights on. I looked at the shed and the walls around the house. Neither of them did I see. I switched on my flashlight and peered through the tree line after taking a closer look at the trees. I switched the flashlight back off after seeing nothing more. There had to be one of them in the cornfield, I knew. It was small enough for me to investigate, yet it was too obvious of a hiding place. When I reached the base of the hill near the cornfield, I cautiously shoved my way inside. I did my best to keep quiet, even though it was difficult. I also didn't turn on the flashlight so as to hide my presence. I had no idea how incredibly terrifying this was at night until it got dark outside. As I was tiptoeing around the crops, I heard footsteps inside. If I was going to catch them, I had to be cunning. I focused on the precise location of the footfall, and when I heard them just above me, I exclaimed, "Got you!" while turning on my flashlight, only to see the back of someone who was escaping the light. I exclaimed, "You're out," and asked, "Who is that?" Then I heard a strange laugh. It sounded like some insane adult, not my brother's laughter, or any other child's for that matter. I was unable to move my hand to look around with the flashlight in an attempt to identify the person. A mature man asked in a quiet voice, "Can I play with you guys?" before his face became visible. The short distance between us obscured half of his face. I could tell he had a face that was rather malformed. I had a difficult time determining if it was a mask or not. My brothers both hid together, and as I ran out of the cornfield and began yelling their names, "Run!" I heard them cry back at me from the same position, "Game over." With their flashlights on, I saw them dash down the slope. I switched them on and instructed them to simply run. We ran until we ran out of breath, then returned to our property at the end of the road. I informed them that the strange-looking man I had heard about earlier in the cornfield was most likely the same one who was hiding there. Their reactions when I conveyed this information remain vivid in my memory. When I told my parents, they seemed perplexed. My dad seems unsure of how to respond. My mother explicitly stated that she no longer wanted us to leave the property after dark. To be honest, I had no desire to. I'm aware that my description of the man scared everyone a little bit because I couldn't sleep that night, wondering, what if that man was outside in the pitch darkness outside one of the windows? But they recognized that I had no incentive to make it up. Needless to say, we never returned to that property across the street. Thankfully, it wasn't too near our land. Only a few years later, my family sold the land. I really hope you like this tale. I am thrilled to share these stories with you. Share this video with others so that we can keep growing and more stories can reach more people. Kindly provide your thoughts and experiences in the comments section. It will aid in my further development. If you like the video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Many thanks, and I hope to see you again soon.